Hey everybody, this is Scott Campbell with Morris Home Inspections here with another new construction video. The last new construction video primarily focused on final inspections. This one primarily focuses on pre-pour foundation inspections and pre-drywall. There are a couple of issues in here on final inspections, but primarily it's pre-drywall, pre-pour foundation. All right, so as usual, we are background verified, we are ASHI inspectors, and we are certified residential thermographers as well. So let's go ahead and get started here. We're looking at a foundation inspection here. It's a pre-pour. So you got your vapor barrier that they put down, and they're going to pour the concrete on this. So most every foundation that I've ever inspected, and all in this area, and I would assume most everywhere, have to have a minimum of 4 inches of concrete. Well, I pulled the string line on the forms, and we have 3 inches. So no matter where you pull a string line from on this foundation, you have to have a minimum of 4. So they had to pull this vapor barrier up and fix this before they poured concrete the next day. Builder was fine, was happy we found it, sent people over to fix it right away. However, this had already passed code enforcement inspection. It's a little concerning. All right, so here's another foundation issue, right? So once they pour these foundations, they put these exterior walls in. They have these anchor bolts that go through the bottom plate on these walls into the foundation. Well, sometimes they'll spall. So this is spalling, which means this piece of concrete's popped off, and you can see the anchor bolt. So there's not really a very good attachment point there. 1 or 2 of these, I'm not honestly too concerned with, but I've had inspections where I've seen 10, 12 of these things. Regardless, if there's 1 or 12, I'm calling it out. Again, I don't think 1 or 2 is going to cause too many issues. However, that's not for me to decide. All right, so here we have a steel jack post on a front entry porch. And you can see that attachment's not working great there, right? I mean, or here. The other issue is they'll typically build decorative trim boxes around these, like front porch posts, and it would look awful funny hanging halfway off this front porch entry slab. All right, so back inside, pre-drywall, and we got some hardware concerns here, right? So you got your engineered roof trusses here, here, and these have to have joist hangers to attach to this laminate. Same here, right? So here you can see they've actually put them in, but they're missing here and they're missing here. Now on this one, they've actually toe-nailed these in. You can't really see them, and it's hard to get a good picture, but they've toe-nailed these in to this laminate beam. Yeah, you can't do that. So it's got to have either a ledger or a joist hanger, which none of these have. So we definitely call that out. And here you go. You're looking at that joist hanger, right? Problem with this one is all of these joist hangers have all of these holes, right? There has to be a fastener in each one of those. That's why it's designed the way it is. Now, you're not going to put a fastener through here because this is an I-beam and that's a piece of OSB. But they have to be on in every one of these holes has to have a fastener. Easy fix, still needs to be done. All right, so now we're on a final inspection. So what I got here is a furnace compressor combo. Natural gas furnace, air conditioner, compressor. They did not do zone controls on these. They decided to do 2 separate units. That's fine. And actually the reason why is this was a 3.5 and this was a 2. Typically you don't see them bigger than 5 tons as a single. So they had a 3.5 ton and a 2 ton. This was for the top floor, smaller square footage. This is for the bottom floor, larger square footage. However, they had the furnaces backwards. So the smaller furnace was attached to the system with the larger compressor. And the larger compressor, or the smaller compressor, was attached to the unit with the larger furnace. So your heating is not correct on this one. So they had to come and switch these out. It's the first time I've ever seen this, and I'd never seen it before since, but it's just an illustration of some of the things that you can certainly find in new construction. And this would cause an issue. It's much easier to fix now than it is once you've moved in and it's really hot or really cold or what have you. All right, back in a pre-drywall. So this red stuff is fire caulking, and this orange stuff is fire foam. So think of Great Stuff foam, expandable foam. That stuff is typically pretty flammable, especially when it's not dry. This is fire resistant. So anytime you have a penetration through a top plate, or if you're on a top floor, a bottom plate, for plumbing, for these branch circuits, for garage door sensor eyes, communications cable, whatever, anytime it passes through a floor or ceiling, it has to be sealed to complete the fire break. Well, they tried here, but it was still open. Yes, I realize that's being picky. Yes, it is still the standard. And then here, they drilled a hole probably for wiring and didn't use it, but they didn't fill it in. So we're going to call that out. Tedious to find that type of stuff, but it's important. All right, here's this one was a pretty big issue, and this one takes a minute to explain. So top floor here, bottom floor here. This is underneath the floor. This right here is a shower pan, and they had the test balloon in there for the plumbing, and water was pouring out of this thing onto the top floor, down through the ceiling, and you could see it here on the bottom floor. They were actually putting sheetrock up. You can see it here. They were putting sheetrock down here on the bottom floor towards the back. And I told those guys, I said, you should not hang the gypsum board here. And I called the builder over, and he said, we'll make sure that we don't hang it there and we dry it out. Well, guess what? I came back the next day to do another one in the other neighborhood, and I decided to stop in, and voila, they had enclosed all of it. Floor still wet, water still in the pan. I guarantee that hadn't had time to dry out. I did not see any signs of air movers or anything in there. So I called the builder, and they had to come in and cut all of this out because you're going to get mold in there. All right, so a couple repairs. Engineered roof trusses here. Find this stuff a lot in new construction. So this is your diagonal support. This is your rafter. And there's supposed to be gusset plates on both sides of this to hold this in. This is a gusset plate. Well, one missing on this side, detached from this side. So when we call out for an engineer to prescribe a repair, this is typically what it looks like. They will prescribe 2 pieces of OSB to be cut to, X amount of length, X amount of height with specified types of fasteners, and they'll sandwich that in. They can be different shapes, sizes, whatever, but this is almost always what the repair looks like. All right, we're back inside on a final. So glass shower enclosure. We'll take the spray head and kind of spray it over into the corner. And what's happening here is they haven't completely sealed this. And so water is leaking out of there. It is a simple fix, which is silicone caulking that goes in these gaps. But you definitely want to have it done, or else you're going to have water. All right, so this was an expensive home we have done. And the rule for windows are if it is within 18 inches of a floor, a walkable surface, and it is greater than 9 square feet in surface area, this window must be tempered. Now, this is a fixed window, one pane. If it had a sash here that you could move up and down, that would be less than 9 square feet, and it would not be required to be tempered. We found 3 windows. No, let me back up and say no window in this home had what we look for, which is a little etched bug, is what we call it. It's basically a label that says, "Hey, this is tempered." No window in the house had this. 3 of them were these fixed windows that were over 9 square feet. So they have to replace these with tempered. Tempered's quite a bit more expensive. All right, we're on a final here again, and we're looking at kick-out flashing. So kick-out flashing is a 45-degree piece of metal that does exactly what it says. As water runs down this junction of the roof and wall, the kick-out flashing kicks the water out away from the wall. I've had arguments with people that these solid surfaces like this and brick don't need to have a kick-out flashing, but that is not the requirement. The requirement is where a wall transitions past the end of a roof, there has to be a kick-out. And they knew it. They were putting it in. They just did not install this right. This is the repaired version here. So this was the same house as the one with the tempered glass. That's it, folks. I tried to keep this one a little bit shorter. Once again, we are Morris Home Inspections, and thanks for watching. Have a good one.